Betting on sports can be hard, but hiring Morgan & Morgan is easy. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury firm. They have over 100 offices nationwide and more than 1,000 lawyers. Their fee is free until they win. Find out more information at forthepeople.com/bestbets or dial #law, that is #529 from your cell phone, and that is FOR, thepeople.com/bestbets. This is a paid advertisement. Good morning from Evo. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Discuss Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VC Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you. As joining me in segment number 2, one of our good friends, Curtis Rogers, who does such amazing work over at 710 Seattle Sports. He's going to be joining me, and we're going to be chatting with him about what we've been seeing here in the first month or so of the college basketball season, looking at Big Ten conference play, which is so very strange to be saying here in early December, and take a look at some of the teams that he is feeling a little bit bullish on, a little bit bearish on, and so much more. So, going to have some fun there in the final segment. Going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Thursday, as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at GNet_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter. Size per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, but we had a fun day of college basketball on Wednesday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Iowa State gets the job done against Marquette. 81-70 the final in this one, as for Marquette, they put up 37 points in the first half, but petered out a little bit in the second half. As for Iowa State, just a good, clean, efficient game. Even though they lose the offensive rebound battle, they win the overall rebound battle by a count of 40-37. 16 offensive rebounds for Marquette, but they go just 5 of 10 at the free throw line. In this one, you did have Cam Jones go for 14 points, 9 assists, but also went 6 of 21 from the floor, as Iowa State loses the turnover battle by a count of 12-11, but they had Keshawn Gilbert on their side. He went 7 of 15 from the floor, 24 total points, and then off the bench, 14 big ones out of Curtis Jones as well. You saw Florida get another win and cover, this by a count of 87-69, and this Florida team has become one of the best cover teams in all of college basketball. Not quite St. Bonaventure, won and covered against Bucknell. They are now, I believe, 8-0 against the spread this far this season, but for Florida, they were able to take it to Virginia after Virginia played within 4 points in the first half. They were hot in the first half, but for Florida, 10 of 25 from three-point range, with Walter Clayton being able to splash in there 27 points. For Florida, they win the turnover battle 15-6. They do lose a rebound battle by a count of 34-30, as for Virginia, they were able to have Elijah Saunders go off for 19 points, but a very quality win there. And Alabama, they hit the road and they get the job done against North Carolina by a count of 94-79, as Alabama goes 12 of 33 from three-point range. No Latrell Wrightsell, no problem, because Aiden Holloway, he was able to give the team 5 of 9 three-point shooting off the bench for 15 points. Houston Mallett has decided to burn his red shirt. He, in his first 2 shots for Alabama, hits 3-pointers. He had 6 points off the bench, and then the season debut that we were supposed to be seeing for Chris Youngblood, it did not happen, but even without him, the team was just fine, as the team is able to do a solid job in this one despite losing the turnover battle 14-13, and they did lose the rebound battle by a count of 42-40, but for RJ Davis, even though he gave the team 18 points, he went just 1 of 11 from 3, 7 of 24 from the floor in North Carolina, 5 of 28 from three-point range, so they bear down. VCU was also able to bear down, and VCU has been one of your good early cover teams this season as well. As for VCU, they get the job done by a count of 89-54 over Georgia Southern. Poor Georgia Southern just gets completely flattened in this game, as they go 6 of 21 from 3 and 18 of 60 overall from the floor. Meanwhile, for VCU, Max Schulga was able to give you 29 points, goes 6 of 8 from three-point range. VCU, they're able to win the turnover battle 14-13. They win the rebound battle, and they just completely lay in bait our good friends over there at Georgia Southern, as right now St. Bonaventure's 8-0 against the spread record. That's the best that you're going to find in all of college basketball, but another team has been pretty rock solid against the spread. Marquette, going into the site, they were 6-1-1 against the spread themselves, but the Furman Paladins, who they go on the road, they get the job against Florida Gulf Coast, this by kind of 76-73. They close as 2.5-point favorites. They just barely cover it to go to now 6-1 against the spread. PJ Smith was able to splash in there 18 points. Garrett Hine was able to give you 7 boards, as well as a Florida Gulf Coast team that went 6 of 18 from three-point range, but right now dealing with a injury to their top rebounder, Keyshawn Kellman, for Florida Gulf Coast. They lose a rebound battle as a result, 34-26. So big-time impact out there. If you're looking at teams that have not been so great against the spread, right now an 0-7 against the spread mark for Louisiana. They have been your worst team at being able to cover in all of college basketball. They were not in action yesterday, fortunately for their sake, but Oklahoma had been very shaky against the spread to begin the season, but you know what? They were able to get themselves a cover to go into 2-5 against the spread on the season, 76-55 all over Tulsa. A Tulsa team that went 5 of 24 from three-point range. Oklahoma State just 3 of 8 from three-point range, so pretty efficient there, and they forced Tulsa into 22 turnovers, so that was a little bit less than savory. What has been very less than savory is how the ACC has fared in this ACC-SEC challenge. They entered into the day on Wednesday, having already lost it by kind of 9-1, so that's not great. And Memphis has been very great against the spread, not quite able to cover against Louisiana Tech, though, as Louisiana Tech, they run the cover play with Daniel Bacho getting a last-second layup to be able to cover the closing line of about 11-11.5 for Memphis. They win by a count of 81-71, cooled down a little bit from three, considering they had been shooting 55% from three at home, 6 of 17 in this one. But Louisiana Tech, they go 13 of 23 from three-point range, off put the fact that they lost the turnover battle by a count of 20-14 for Memphis. They win the rebound battle as well by a count of 39-26 as PJ Haggerty supplies the team 23 points, 7 steals, 6 assists. So Memphis getting off to a really nice start to the season. Also, UConn, it's been a team that has been able to be pretty undefeated against the spread at home. On the road, a little bit of a less than savory situation, but UConn, they win, they cover against Baylor by a count of 76-72 for UConn, 8 of 25 from three-point range. No Alex Caravan, no problem as they're able to play pretty much even up on the glass. They lose the rebound battle 30-29, but they win the turnover battle by a count of 10-7 as you had Asante Aria not give you a lot in terms of scoring, but 7 assists to 1 turnover. His efficiency was big. You did have 14 rebounds from Josh Ajawana for Baylor, but only 3 points out of him. And for Baylor, they go 6 of 17 from three-point range, with Langston Love being able to supply the team with 16 points, but didn't get a lot out of Jaden Nunn, who only gave the team 8 points, and they were without VJ Edgecombe in this game as well. So both teams dealing with a few injuries there. In terms of the ACC and SEC challenge as well, you also saw Mississippi State just completely land-based Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh closed as about a 5.5-point underdog. They got down in this game by, at one point, 56-26. Just a complete and utter butt-whipping out there. Final lines, by the way, 90-57 on that, with Kashawn Murphy being able to throw in their 20 points, 13 rebounds for Cameron Matthews. And for Pittsburgh, they went a nice hearty 10 of 64 from the floor, and they got out-rebounded in this game 49-27. Then for the SEC-ACC challenge, the SEC went 14-2. Texas, they get the job done, they get a win, and they just barely get a cover over NC State, this by kind of 63-59. Wasn't a thing of beauty, but they should be thankful that they've got Tremont Mark back. He was able to get the team double figures. Arthur Kaluma throws in their 15 rebounds. For NC State, they win the turnover battle 12-9, but they lose a rebound battle by kind of 37-30 as you had Marcus Hill throwing their 16 points, but team goes to 6 of 14 at the free throw line. Texas not a lot better at 7 of 14 at the free throw line, but still get the job done. Then for the ACC, one of their 2 wins in the ACC challenge, that would be Duke, 84-78 in a really high-power game between 2 tremendous teams. As G&I Broom, he was able to clean up with 20 points, 12 rebounds. For Auburn, they did a nice job keeping things clean with 8 turnovers, but Duke was even better, just 4 turnovers for them, with Cooper Flagg really having a coming-out party. Still needs to work on that outside shot, 0 of 4 from 3, but did everything else in this game. 22 points, 11 boards, 4 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks, and a partridge and a pear tree. But off the bench, 6 made threes from Isaiah Evans was really a big difference maker for Duke. Meanwhile, you did have, on top of what G&I Broom was able to deliver, Tahad Pettiford, the freshman, be able to supply the team with 20 points off the bench as well. Virginia Tech right now looking very sorry, and they're looking like one of the lesser power conference teams in all of college basketball. Vanderbilt, they get the win, they get the cover, this by a count of 80-64, as for Virginia Tech, they go 8 of 29 from three-point range. They lose the turnover battle 15-8. They do win the rebound battle 37-27, but off the bench, Jason Edwards, 19 points for Vanderbilt. MJ Collins off the bench, he had 15 points, as Vanderbilt starters really didn't give you a whole heck of a lot in this game. I'm doing the math in my head, and they only had 31 of their 80 points from their starters. So yeah, that was a little bit interesting to say the least. And then out there on the West Coast, you saw San Diego State absolutely be able to take it to Fresno State, this by a count of 84-62. It's looking like it's going to be a long year for Fresno State, who shot 18 of 66 from the floor and 5 of 26 from three-point range. For Fresno State, they win the turnover battle 14-11, but they lose the rebound battle 53-39 as Fresno State got the tempo cranked up. They did not get the results that they were looking for, though. And Oregon, they take down USC, a USC team that's now covered just one game this far this season, 68-60. And this was after USC had a 53-46 lead with 4+ minutes remaining. They don't cover 6, and for those that know me, know that I took the 6 with USC in this one, so that was very much less than savory for a USC team that they go 2 of 13 from three-point range. They do go 20 of 26 at the charity stripe. They play even up with regards to turnovers. They actually win the rebound battle 35-34, but Jackson Shell said the difference in this one, 24 points. He's able to go 10 of 14 at the free throw line as well, and then you did see Creighton be able to get the job done against Kansas. This by a count of 76-63. Number 1 does go down at Pops Isaacs. He was the reason why. 6 of 9, very nice, from three-point range, going off for 27 points. Ryan Kalkbrenner was back in the fold as well. 17 points, 10 rebounds for Kansas. You had DeJuan Harris actually be quite a bit more aggressive in this game. He takes 21 shots and he only puts in there 15 points. For Kansas, they actually win the turnover battle by a count of 15-5, but just was not able to get a lot to go, and they lose that rebound battle by a count of 44-31 as well. So lots of intrigue in college basketball with regards to the top teams, but you also saw a lot of intrigue with regards to some of the mid-majors as well. Some of these are rising, some of these are falling, and for Portland State, it's been touch and go for them. They lose to Seattle, this by a count of 91-74, and DePaul continues to be able to cover. I believe that they have covered all but 2 games thus far this season. 76-62. They fall to Texas Tech, but in a lot of places this closed right around 14-14.5. I personally got 14.5. I know some places said that this closed at 13.5, which you just got the worst of the number there, but that's it for DePaul. They go 11 of 35 from three-point range in this one. They did a nice job from two-point range, going 13 of 22, but they weren't able to get a whole heck of a lot going there. But what they did do a nice job of is being able to stay relatively okay on the glass. David Skogman was able to chip in their 8 rebounds, and for Texas Tech, they were without one of their main guys in this one, and JT Toppin, but no Toppin, no problem, as Frederico, so nice they named him twice, was solid down low. Elijah Hawkins, only 2 points, but 4 steals, 5 assists. So Texas Tech, they do get the job done there, and also being able to get the job done. How about what we saw out of Denver, 80-59 over a Sacramento State team that's looking relatively rough as of right now, and things have been rough for Seton Hall. Another non-cover for them. They do get the outright win against NJIT, but it's by a kind of 67-56, and yay, verily, that you were able to get an over there. So a little bit overwhelming in that one, but man, it has been a wild ride in college basketball over these last few days. You also saw American in overtime take down George Washington, this by a count of 81-71, and Colgate in for a rough year, it looks like. They lose to Cornell by a count of 84-57, as Cornell in this one, they go 13 of 27 from three-point range. They shoot 58% from the floor. Colgate 5 of 20 from three-point range, and Colgate lost the turnover battle by a count of 14-12. So that was not good, to say the least. And Wagner over Coppin State. Total was 117.5, 65-52. Whoever set that total knew what the heck they were doing, and that's pretty much my total, so I take a little bit of credit there. And if you're looking at what we're all getting in college basketball right now, what we're getting is a whole bunch of intrigue with also, I have to throw this in here as well, Maryland, 83-59. They just completely lambasted Ohio State, an Ohio State team that went 4 of 19 from three-point range. They had 17 turnovers in this game. And for Maryland, David Queen, 17 points, 11 rebounds. Had I not thrown that in there, I would have not been doing my job, because at one point, Maryland was up in this game by a count of 68-34. I think their lead might have gotten as high as 40 at one point. I know for sure that they were up 64-25. So, yeah, this has been just a wild last few days of college basketball. And if you're looking trend-wise at what we're getting in college basketball right now, it's been topsy-turvy as well. As overall the season to date, overs and unders are pretty even Steven. 680 overs to 673 unders. Favorites, they've just been taking a licking. They're hitting at just 47.9% this year, 648, 704, and 19 against the spread. If you look at the last 7 days in college basketball, though, a little bit of normalcy is returning. Underdogs hitting at 50.9%, 138, 133, and 4 against the spread, while unders, we've had 138 of them. We've had 134 overs with 3 pushes along the way. So that's where we're seeing college college basketball right now, and that's what we all got on a fun Wednesday. Now let's take a look at what we've all gotten this far in this college basketball season, look at what we're getting in Big Ten play, what we saw in these non-conference tournaments, and so much more. Curtis Rogers, it does amazing work over at 710 Seattle Sports. I'm Radio Arcus with myself, David Peterson, now a part of the Decent Family Podcast. And we're back in lovely Las Vegas for Coach with myself, Craig Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It is always great to be joined by this man as we've got Curtis Rogers aboard. He does such great work over at 710 Seattle Sports, taking a look at this great game of basketball that we all know and love. But frankly, if it's out there in the Pacific Northwest, he's covering it all, whether that be the Seattle Seahawks or very much in the thick of the playoff hunt, whether that be the Seattle Kraken, the Seattle Mariners, or in this case, Big Ten basketball with Washington playing against USC and teams like that at like midnight Eastern time, because nothing says Big Ten basketball like your quality Washington versus UCLA game. But that said, Curtis does a great job of covering it all. And you're able to follow him on Twitter /X at a kid from Kent all together. And Curtis, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much.
Greg, yeah, happy to be on with you. Always enjoy talking college basketball with you. And yeah, it is weird seeing that Big Ten logo on the courts of Washington, UCLA, USC, and Oregon. It is weird to know that those games that we have seen, Oregon taking on USC, Washington, UCLA, count in the Big Ten standings, not the Pac-12 standings, as we've all come accustomed to over the last 50-plus years or whatever. But it is still a weird sight to see. But we're doing our best keeping up with all the new landscapes we see out there in the college basketball world, especially now that conference play is starting to get going across the country. Should make for some quality races, especially in the Big Ten.
Yep, the old saying of the more I see, the less I know very much applies here. And that said, Curtis, just how do you take a look at the Big Ten right now? Because I feel like all the newcomers are having a little bit of a rough go of it right now, saying it's Oregon, but as we're recording this, Oregon down at the half against USC, who is really having a rough go of it as well. But the Big Ten just feels like a little bit of a mismatch. I think that we can conclude that Minnesota is probably going to be one of the lesser teams in college basketball this season in terms of power conference teams. But that said, I just take a look at the Big Ten. I don't necessarily see that one team that's head and shoulders above everyone else, but at the same time, too, I think that there's a lot of, shall we say, middle teams.
There really is. And a couple of teams that I think we all kind of thought were maybe going to be better than what they've been. Indiana and Rutgers, they have not really lived up to the billing yet. Purdue's solid as they've been. They have that big win against Alabama still on their resume. And like you said, Oregon off to a really good start. Sans the first half against USC where they find themselves down 7 points. I thought they looked really good in their tournament over the Thanksgiving holiday, picking up 3 really quality wins along the way and beating the aforementioned Alabama Crimson Tide too. Oregon, I think, has been the biggest surprise to me in the Big Ten. I know they had talent. Everybody knew that they had talent. It's kind of different than the Oregon teams that you and I have talked about in the past, where so often we talk about Dana Altman's teams, where it's like, hey, yeah, talk to me in February about the Ducks. Talk to me once we're getting closer to conference tournament time, because so often they've been a team that has turned it on late in the regular season and has won a few games in their conference tournament and has gone to the NCAA tournament and finds himself playing in the second weekend. Whereas this year, they're off to a really good start, and that's such a far cry from what we have come to know about this Ducks team. So, to me, I think they've been the most pleasant surprise in the Big Ten, and really of all those newcomers, like you mentioned. I don't know if I'm going to go as far as saying they're a threat to take down Purdue and maybe win the Big Ten, but they're certainly in the upper quadrant of the Big Ten, no doubt about that.
And you speak of Purdue, they're going to be having to go on the road on Thursday and facing off against a Penn State team that is a big, giant upstart as well. And I think that's going to be so interesting to take a look at this conference in terms of stylistic differences, because you've got a Penn State team that's looking to push the envelope. They're generating a lot more turnovers. They're going a little bit less in the post. They're going more with guard play. And then you still have your traditional big oriented teams like Washington, even though they have not been in the Big Ten for very long. They're certainly one of those teams with great Osibor, having to be a little bit of a do-it-all player, and I think that that's going to make things so interesting in terms of conference play in the Big Ten as well.
Absolutely. The clashing styles make fights, as they always say. I think this is going to be a very hotly contested Big Ten because of all the differentiating styles. Indiana is another team that likes to run it through their bigs. Umar Ballo, a veteran of Gonzaga and Arizona over the course of his college career now in Bloomington. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of different ways to win in the Big Ten. much more so than we've ever seen, because I think we've all come used to seeing games that are, 60-56 final scores like that, 52-48. Heck, we just saw a few weeks ago Wisconsin put up over 100 points against Arizona. Not saying that Arizona right now is a great team. They're below 500, but you never really ever see a Wisconsin team or really any team in the Big Ten put up that much points that frequently. So I think it's going to be a much more different Big Ten than what we've become accustomed to, just simply because of, like you said, there's so many different ways that these teams get buckets, and it's just so much more different than, hey, we're going to just pack the paint and hope that you can shoot over us, or hey, we're going to, dribble out all 30 seconds on the shot clock before we make a move towards the basket. It's not like that anymore in the Big Ten, or at least not so far to start this season.
Absolutely, and it's going to be so fun to see what we get in the Big Ten this season. As joining me on the show, we do have Curtis Rogers, who does tremendous work over at 710 Seattle Sports, joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. And we've seen a lot of great college basketball over the last few weeks, and just in terms of what we saw on Feast Weekend, for that matter, these challenges, the Big 12, Big East, and the ACC versus SEC challenge, have there been any real big takeaways for you, or teams that perhaps you're either a little bit more stock up / stock down on? Because we've seen a lot of these top teams get tested. Some of them have been able to pass those tests in flying colors, other of them, well, not so much. Looking at UConn, unfortunately, though, they bounced back and were able to get the job done on Wednesday. But that said, are there any teams in particular that are standing out to you that you're feeling a little bit more bullish / bearish on?
Well, yeah, you mentioned, UConn's Maui Invitational. I mean, one they would love to forget, especially because Maui Invitational, I believe you have to pay to play in that one. It's not a invitational where you get a piece of the pie, so to speak. So Dan Hurley obviously not pleased with that. But like you mentioned, getting that big win against Baylor immediately following it, they looked really good. I've really liked, even though, they were in a rock fight with Duke on Wednesday night, I've really liked what I've seen out of Auburn, even after the unfriendly skies that the Auburn Tigers had early on in the season. They've been able to put that past them. John Broome has been, in my estimation, the best player in America to start the season. Really liked his battle with Cooper Flagg on Wednesday night. Those two guys, very, very talented, going up against each other. But a team that I look at right now that, is not getting enough attention, and I think it's just how they were able to handle Marquette, and that's Iowa State, the Cyclones. I don't know if everybody is aware of just how good this Cyclones team can be, especially at their home arena, one of the best home court advantages in all of college basketball. I think this Big 12 season is going to be one where it's going to be just an absolute bloodbath. But I think this Iowa State team, led by TJ Otzelberger, I really think they're going to make some noise this year. I mean, really just having that game in hand against Marquette. I look at Marquette's upcoming schedule too. Not easy, especially after this one. Not to say that this was going to be a must win. I mean, it would be great on a tournament resume, but you look at what awaits Marquette. They have a game against Wisconsin, that in-state rivalry, number 11 Wisconsin, then Dayton, a pretty good ball club, Butler, Xavier, Providence. I mean, it doesn't get any easier for this Marquette team. So you kind of look at the opportunity on Wednesday night against Iowa State. You hope that this is not the start of something. And I mean, you look at the numbers that Marquette put up in that game, not very efficient at all. You had Jones and Joplin combined go 9 for 34. Yikes. That's not going to get the job done. They're going to need a lot more consistent scoring out of those two, especially in those kinds of big games going forward. But that Iowa State Marquette game, it was a really big matchup, and just kept going back to that one. A lot of takeaways from that one. But I think the Cyclones are a team to be reckoned with in that Big 12.
They're embracing their inner Carmelo Anthony. Put up 20 shots and get 15 points. Because you know what? At the end of the day, only people recognize the 15 points. So there's that aspect of things. But absolutely, that is a team of concern. And just really with the Big East as a whole, I'm not sure how you take a look at them, but they really shrink in terms of my hierarchy of conferences right now. While the SEC, we saw them have such a tremendous record against other power conference teams entering into the SEC versus ACC challenge, and it only got better over the last 2 days with the way that they just pretty much completely mollywopped the ACC in that challenge.
They did, bludgeoned them. I believe it was 21-2, the SEC's record against the ACC at one point this week. I mean, that is just absolute domination. over one conference. Wave your banner, SEC. I know we're all tired of hearing about the SEC in college football. We don't necessarily view that conference as the dominant conference in college basketball. You know, they've always had a lot of competitive teams for sure, but I would not put it up near the ACC. I would not put it up near the Big 12, at least historically. But boy, these last couple of weeks, it has been incredibly one-sided in terms of the SEC's dominance over the ACC. Congrats to them. I think, you know, the big winner to me, really of all the ACC teams, because it wasn't many teams that got a win over an SEC school. Clemson picking up that big win against Kentucky, that to me was maybe the most impressive win of the ACC-SEC challenge, especially because Clemson coming off an NCAA tournament run a year ago, Kentucky being as highly ranked as they were coming into that one, Brad Brownell doing a really good job over there in Clemson, South Carolina. So even though the ACC didn't win hardly any games against the SEC, they got their money's worth with that Clemson victory over Kentucky.
Yep, they certainly did. And Clemson looking like a team that could be one of those top teams in the ACC. Wake Forest, who I was bullish on to begin the year, not so much, as Curtis Rogers, always bullish on him. He's joining me right here on Cusco Soups, and have to talk about a team that's out there in your neck of the woods too, in Gonzaga, because they had an interesting week or so. Not so much hoopla for them this week, but for Gonzaga, they lose that game to West Virginia, but then they're able to bounce back. They win the rest of their games in the battle for Atlantis. How have you gauged this team this far this season in a college basketball landscape where I would say Auburn's the most complete team, but we saw them in that dogfight against Duke on Wednesday, obviously in Cameron Indoor Stadium, no less. But that said, I just look at the landscape of college basketball, and it feels like there's just many, many teams that can be competitive for a perhaps title, perhaps a Final Four run. But I think Gonzaga, just like so many of these other contenders, does have their flaws as well.
They definitely do, especially giving up, the 86 points to West Virginia. Defensively, leaving a lot to be desired in a performance like that, especially against a Power 5 school. But I thought they rebounded in a figurative sense against Indiana the following day. I feel like you can take more away from a team having success in an in-season tournament rather than a team not having success in one. Like, I still think UConn is a team that you should expect to see compete for a Final Four this season, even though they got swept in Maui, which is still wild to think about, that they didn't pick up a single win coming off of back-to-back national championships. You know, it just goes to show that how tough this third one could potentially be for them. But I look at Gonzaga. I wouldn't say that their battle for Atlantis was a complete failure. You know, still picking up the 2 victories against Indiana and Davidson. I think that was a good way to end the tournament for them. Obviously, a little bit of a bitter taste in their mouth, considering that they're probably the favorites heading into that one. You look at their schedule coming up, 2 really, really tough opponents heading into the conference season for them. You've got their series against Kentucky. That one's going to be in Seattle, so it's going to be a very favorable crowd for Gonzaga. Probably wouldn't say it's 100% Gonzaga supporters because Kentucky's got a pretty national fan base. And then after that one, a week from that one, you've got Gonzaga taking on UConn in New York City. So you've got 2 really, really tough opponents, 2 measuring 6 games for this Gonzaga ball club. We're going to know a lot about them coming out of these 2 ball games, whether or not they're for real. I think they're for real. I think if you can at least manage a split against Kentucky or UConn, Gonzaga is going to be in a really good spot heading into WCC play.
Yep, I think so as well. And we have to touch a little bit upon the Mountain West as well, as things have been looking a little bit hairy out there as well, because I know that we are doing this as some of those Mountain West games for Wednesday are wrapping up, but I think that that's going to be such an interesting conference with Nevada doing what they always do. They look really good at the beginning part of the season, and they'll probably just taper off, squeak by into the NCAA tournament just to somehow, some way let us down. But we even saw in the games on Wednesday, even though New Mexico and Utah State got the job done, Wyoming and San Jose State, who didn't have the world's greatest runs of things entering in, they were very competitive, and I think that this is going to be a great conference to watch all season long.
For sure, and they've been a really competitive conference the last couple of years. I think San Diego State, to me, is one of the draws in this conference. Their battle of Fresno State on Wednesday night, just evidence of that. You mentioned Nevada. I was surprised to see them fall to Washington State this week, considering they were double-digit favorites against the Cougs. Shout out to the Cougs for getting that one in. But like you said, Utah State, it's weird. You know, how many head coaches have they had over the last decade there? and yet they continue to just churn out winner after winner after winner. I mean, Danny Sprinkle was just there for a year. He goes to Washington. Utah State continuing to win. Shout out to what they've got going on over there in Logan, Utah, because I don't know how many teams, Greg, can withstand that amount of changeover from year to year and still put out a competitive product, especially in today's day and age when the transfer portal opens immediately after a coach leaves. I mean, they lose not just the coach of the year in the Mountain West Conference in Danny Sprinkle, but they also lose Great Osabor, who was the Mountain West Conference Player of the Year last year. So losing that much talent, that kind of coach, that's not easy to come back from. Utah State getting off to a really good start here.
Absolutely. That offense has been firing all cylinders. The only thing that fires on all cylinders better, though, is your work, Curtis. You do such an amazing job over at 710 Seattle Sports. You always bring it when you're on this podcast as well. So love to get people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people are able to follow along on social media and other platforms.
Well, yeah, like Greg said, you can follow along Twitter and Instagram at A Kid from Kent. Also, seattlesports.com is where you want to go for all of our content, keeping our fingers on the pulse of the Huskies, Cougs, and Zags. Seattle U, Eastern. A lot of good basketball up here in the Pacific Northwest. We've got it all covered. And Greg, always happy to hop on with you, talk some college basketball here in December. One of my favorite sayings is it's starting to get cold outside, but the action indoors is heating up. And that's exactly what's going on in college basketball. Great time to jump in if you're looking to get in. And I'm super excited to see what conference play is going to look like across this great game of ours, because the non-conference slate has had some really, really fun matchups. Now we're going to see just the landscape brand new to everybody in college basketball.
Absolutely. And as we're recording this, we've got conference play with the traditional Oregon versus USC game. I believe that is indeed on the Big Ten Network, which if you're trying to adjust your eyes, wondering if you woke up on a different dimension or something like that, no, that's actually correct. That's just where we are in college basketball. It's wild and crazy, and a man that is here for the wildness and the craziness and does a great job of being able to parse through it all is Curtis Rogers. So big thanks to Curtis for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast to give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Thursday as we some big shot. All right, guys, it's getting into crunch time with regards to our holiday shopping because Thanksgiving is come and gone. We're through Black Friday. We're in the month of December, and you need to get that unique gift for someone that you truly care about. Uncommon Goods, that is a perfect place to go because they've got something for everyone, whether that be an experience or a gift that you just can't find anywhere else. Like, I've been in a lot of circumstances where I try to get something for my mom because when you're a guy and you're trying to shop for your mom, you have no idea what in the heck to do. Just being able to get something that's a little bit off the walls is what Uncommon Goods does a great job of. Their products are high quality, they're unique, and oftentimes handmade or made in the United States, and they have the most meaningful, out-of-the-ordinary gifts anywhere. They even have gifts that you can customize for those that are book lovers, diehard sports fans. They've got unique mugs, and if you're gifting for someone that doesn't want a thing, they want an experience, they want to be able to take part in something that is fun. They've got classes from everything from reading a lunar astrology chart, some unique cooking classics, mixology, and so much more. And you can get 15% off right now over at uncommongoods.com/coast. You go to uncommongoods.com/coast. You get 15% off of your order. That is over at uncommongoods.com/goods. Uncommon Goods, we're out of the ordinary. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family podcast. Always great to be joined by Curtis Rogers, who does such amazing work over at 710 Seattle Sports. Taking a look at this great game of college basketball that we all know and love every single time he joins me, lends such great insights. Did so once again today, so big thanks to Curtis for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Thursday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at @UNet_D1. Going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go with the major conference games first, and then everything that is going down in the Southland, the SWAC, the MEAC, along with that, the Atlantic Sun, the Patriot League, the America East, and the Northeast Conference. Those are going to be games at the bottom, along with the Big South as well, is going to be at the bottom. So how about if we get things started with 7:57, 7:58 on the card. It is Detroit, and they are going to be playing us to Fort Wayne. IPFW finds themselves as 7.5 to 8 point favorites. So on this game between a 147.5 to a 148, and this will be a game that I write up, and I'm willing to lay it with Fort Wayne. I set them as a 13-point favorite. Fort Wayne, a top 50 team in the country right now in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and top 60 team in terms of being able to force turnovers on defense on a per possession basis. Going against a Detroit unit that has been having a little bit of a rough time holding on to the ball at home. They're a bottom 50 team in terms of turnovers per possession. Now Detroit actually a top 75 team in terms of rebound rate, but they don't have a single guy that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game. Steven Okoro has been that top guy with about 5 rebounds per game. Eric Mulder on the flip side for Fort Wayne has been rock solid down low. 10.5 points, 8.5 boards. Not a guy that's going to stretch the floor and pop threes or anything like that, but has been very consistent in the post for them. And then you've got the versatility of Rashid Bello, who plays so well off of top scorer Jalen Jackson. Jackson right now supplying for the team 19 points. Hasn't necessarily shot it well from 3. Bello, though, he shot 38% from 3. 3.5 assists, stealing 14.5 points per game. And the real surprise has been Corey Hednott II. He has come in after he was a bit of a reserve last season, and he's given the team 11.5 points. Been their best 3-point shooter at north of 45%. Fort Wayne as a whole shoots 38% from the outside. They only turn the ball over about 9.5 times per game. And for Detroit, it's been a much better effort this year than a season ago, with the whole being greater than the sum of its parts, with Orlando Lovejoy coming in. He's been able to log for the team 14 points per game, but one of their main guys, Mac Mansell, has missed the last 4 games. He was shooting 38% from 3. He was able to give the team 13.5 points per game, and without him, you just fear that the scoring is going to go into a little bit of a funk. Their freshman in Grant Grodznik, he's been able to give you about 5 points per game, but that's a case where he has been very hit or miss as well. They've had to give him a lot more minutes just due to necessity, and I do think that for Detroit, it's going to be tough for them against a Fort Wayne backcourt that is just so skilled, and on top of that, you've got Quentin Morton Robinson giving you an assist-to-turnover ratio darn near 3, so going to be writing up Fort Wayne, laying the number, and in terms of total, I set mine at a 151. I do think that for Fort Wayne, they're going to be able to get things cranked up tempo. They've been a highly efficient team, and also a top 100 team in terms of total possessions per game, while Detroit, they themselves, certainly been giving up a little bit on defense recently, so good to be in on this total over, and we'll lay with Fort Wayne. 759, 760 on the betting board. It is Penn State, and they're going to be playing us Purdue. Purdue a 1.5 to a 2-point underdog. In your total on this game, it is 149 to 150. Going to be writing up Purdue. I feel like they should be the favorite in this spot. Recognize that Penn State has had a lot of early triumphs this far this season, but do want to see what happens when the rubber meets the road. They've been playing against a bunch of, shall we say, not so great teams. When they went up against Clemson, they were held to 67 points, and now they're going to be at a disadvantage down low, with Purdue being a top 25 team in the country with regards to rebound rate on the road. And Trey Kaufman-Renn, he is certainly not Zach Edey, but he's been solid. 19 points, 7 boards, 2.5 assists, able to shoot it well from 3-point range. Love what he's bringing to the table, and this is a Purdue team that, even though they do lose Edey from a season ago, this team last year was a top 3 team in the country in terms of 3-point shooting percentage, picking up right where they left off last year, shooting 42% from 3-point range. Everyone with at least 4 points per game that has made at least 1 3 this year, shooting at least 40% from the outside. Braden Smith, 9 assists, 5 boards, 13 points per game for a Purdue team then. They do a pretty solid job taking care of the ball with about 11 turnovers per game. Penn State, their bread and butter is being able to generate turnovers. Top 15 team in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. They themselves are shooting about 38% from 3-point range, and they've got 6 different guys that are giving you at least 9 points per game. And now the Tennessee transfer from Freddie De Leon, he's been able to pick it up as well, giving you 9+ points in 4 out of the last 5 games. Ace Baldwin, he's done a rock solid job, giving you 8.5 assists, 2.5 steals, but does turn the ball over 4 times per game. And Yannick Niederhauser is pretty much the only guy that bangs down low. 14.5 points, 6.5 boards, does give you 2 blocks per contest. I like these guys like Nick Kern, Puff Johnson, who are combining for about 22 points per contest. But that said, I do think that this is going to be a tough test for Purdue. On top of that, Fletcher Loyer has been doing a great job being able to pop it from off the ball as well. Even though Purdue has suffered some injuries, they're not quite the same team down low. This is still a team that is a dynamo with regards to their offense. I do think that they're going to be able to break through that Penn State pressure and be able to get the job done. So I did write up Purdue. I like them outright on the money line. in terms of this total, I did set mine at a 155.5. You've got a Penn State team looking to crank up tempo, and for this Purdue team, defense isn't quite what it was a few seasons ago, but the offense, with their three-point shooting, it has been very supreme. So looking at the over, and I like Purdue on the money line. 761, 762 on the betting board. It is Oakland playing us at Wright State. Wright State hopes to be the right side as they are a point underdog, and your total on this game, it is 136.5. Felt like Wright State should be the favorite. I am not necessarily too fond of taking a bunch of short road favorites, but I'm going to be willing to do it here with Wright State. With this Oakland team, they are coming off of a massive triumph against Toledo. That was their first game against a Division I team in which they scored north of 64 points. So, and overall for the season, Oakland shooting well less than 30% from three-point range. I just think that might have been one of those flash-in-the-pan games. You'll be able to get a little bit more out of Malcolm Christie, who's pretty much the only guy on the roster right now shooting above 30% from three-point range. He's been able to supply the team with 7 points per game. And DQ Cole, he's the main returner from a season ago. He's been able to log for the team 12 points per game. You have been able to get quite a bit down low out of Burrow. Hopefully I said that correctly. Navalura, he's been able to supply the team with 8 boards, 12.5 points per game after he was one of the main reserves from a season ago. But this is an Oakland team that is looking to play a lot more down low. They've got each other top 4 scorers, give you at least 4.5 rebounds per game. They're not really turning the ball over a lot, but again, allowing 25% three-point shooting. They're shooting 61% at the free throw line, and even though there's no more Scott Nagy over at Wright State, this is still a pretty efficient offense. It's a little bit of a top-heavy offense with Brandon Noel being able to supply 21 points, 8 boards, a block and a half, and a steal and a half per game. And Alex Hibageste, he's been able to give you 16.5 points per game. I'll never say his last name correct, by the way. That is a crazy one, but that's at 16.5 points, 4 boards, 3 assists. Right now shooting 45.5% from three-point range, and what makes it worse is that he's from the great state of Wisconsin as well, so there's that. But for Wright State, it's just being able to find scoring from these other guys like a Keaton Norris, who's able to give you a little bit of facilitation, Mike Amarajbe, who's been able to give you 6.5 points, 3.5 rebounds per game. You've got a lot of guys that have been able to make those ancillary production pieces just be able to flow. You've got 36% three-point shooting with this Wright State team. They take care of the ball, only turn the ball over about 10.5 times per game, and it's a little bit of improved defense as well. They've now given up 70 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games after they were outside the top 3 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, did somebody total 144.5? I do think that Oakland is going to be able to rise up a little bit more offensively, and for Oakland over the last few seasons, they've actually been a far less efficient defense at home rather than on the road. So I'm in on the over, but I do like Wright State outright on the money line. 763, 764 on the betting board. It is TCU playing goes to Xavier, and the X-Men find themselves as a point underdog. Total on this game is 144.5. Set Xavier as the 1-point underdog, so I'm going to be willing to take Xavier just outright on the money line in this one. For Xavier, less than savory effort a few days ago against South Carolina State. They were pushed to a 1-possession game at home against a MEAC team. That's not great, but I also really don't like what I'm seeing out of this TCU team either. For TCU, they're trying to mix and match right now with a bunch of guys that I think have upside. Frankie Collins last year was in the top 10 nationally in terms of steals on a per possession basis, and each of your top 4 scores for TCU are generating at least a steal per contest, but it feels like you've got sort of your bearings with Noah Reynolds being a main facilitator, 10 points, 3.5 assists per game, but TCU as a whole, they're shooting 28.5% from three-point range. They just don't have that pop from the outside that they've had in past seasons. Tarzarian White is able to give you 10 points per game, and down low, Ernest Uday has been able to give you 9 rebounds per game. He's the only guy in the roster that's really giving you north of 5 rebounds per contest, just not the same team that we've seen in the past, and Xavier clearly has the upside. Last 2 games, they have been less than tremendous on offense. Prior to that, they got into 75 plus in pretty much every game, and the question becomes, what are you going to be able to get out of some of these transfers like a Marcus Foster? It feels like it's starting to find his way. He's given the team 8+ points in each of the last 5 games, shooting north of 40% from 3 after being at Furman last season. Ryan Conwell has led the way with 16.5 points, shooting currently 47% from 3, and Zach Fremantle picking up right where he left off prior to going down with injury 2 seasons ago. 15.5 points, 8 boards, 2.5 assists, while Davion McKnight has been that main facilitator with an assist-to-turnover ratio north of 3. Do think that Xavier gets back online against a TCU team that is pretty solid at being able to generate turnovers, but just not that same opposing defense that they've been in the past. They're coming off of a loss against Colorado State. They've been, a bunch has been looking to go up tempo a bit more in recent years, but they've had to dial it back a little bit more this season, but defense is just not where it has been 69 points or more given up in 4 out of the last 5 games, so makes it a very interesting circumstance. For Xavier, they're really looking to push tempo, much like they did 2 seasons ago when they were a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament. Do think that they're going to have success on that front. I do think that this offense is going to return to form. So did set Xavier as the 1-point favorite. I do like them outright on the money line. I made my total of 149, so I'm also in on this total over. 765, 766 on the betting board. It is Cleveland State on the road against UW Milwaukee, and UW Milwaukee a favorite of 8 points. Total on this game between 139.5 to a 140. Set my line at 6.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Cleveland State. Now for UW Milwaukee, what is going to be massive for them is what they're able to get down low, as they should be able to win the battle on the glass, as you've got Jermichael Stillwell, who's been able to pull in for the team a little bit over 10 rebounds per game to go along with his 12.5 points per contest. Non-D1 transfer has made a big impact for them, but Dylan Arnett, he has been solid on the flip side for Cleveland State. He's given this team 7.5 boards for a Cleveland State team that has really struggled from three-point range, shooting 22.6% from three-point range. Something that I think is going to be going northward. And something else that this team really needs is Ibrahim Adiba getting back to being that guy that he was over at Coastal Carolina a few seasons ago when he was giving out 5+ assists per game. Has never really been a assertive scorer or anything like that, but at 6'6", he can be sort of a nice, taller sort of point guard. Just hasn't been that thus far this season for Cleveland State. So something to be mindful of, though. He's not really turned the ball over a ton for a Cleveland State team that they themselves do turn the ball over about 15 times per game. So it's been less than savory. But I do think that they're going to be able to hold in this game against a Milwaukee team that they themselves are turning the ball over about 13.5 times per game. Famous Folks, who comes on over from Louisiana, 5 assists, 15 points per game, 2 steals, shooting north of 46% from 3. But Milwaukee's only shooting about 30% from the outside, with A.J. McKee coming on over from Queens NC. His former coach Bart Lundy has brought him on over. He's been able to give the team 14 points. He's acclimated himself to the offense very nicely, but dealing with the injury to Eric Platt, one of the main guys from a season ago, facing on field. He was a guy that was rock solid for them a season ago. He's been out for the last 4 or so games as well. I do think that leaves this little bit short-handed UW Milwaukee team in a tough spot to be able to cover, and I do think that both of these teams start to shoot it much better from three-point range. So I'm going to be in on this little over. I set my total 142.5, and at 7+, won't take those points with Cleveland State. 767, 768 on the betting board. Valparaiso is going to be playing against a Drake, and the Drake is a favorite of 11 points. So on this game, it is 137 to 138. I did set Drake as a 9.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take the double figures here with Valparaiso, and I really like what I'm seeing out of this Drake team. Ben McCollum is proving that he's just one of the best overall coaches in college basketball right now with what he's been able to do with this bunch. But for Valparaiso, the offense has actually been rock solid for this team. You've got Cooper Schwieger, who's been able to give you 13 points, 8 boards. Cam Maniwu, he's going to have a little bit of a tough time down low. He's been able to give to Drake right around about 6.5 rebounds per game. And then the guy that I think is going to be able to help give this team just a little bit more on offense in general is Jefferson De La Cruz Monegro, who's been able to give you 11.5 points. Not really going to be some amazing 3-point shooter or anything like that, but he's keeping things clean for Valparaiso. They're only turned the ball over 9 times per contest. He's giving out about 2.7 assists per game. You've got All Right. His first name is All, and his last name is Right. He comes over from the country of Mexico. He's been a part-time starter, give you 8 points, shooting 41% from 3, 2.5 assists per game. I guess you could say he's been all right for this team. Well, he certainly has been all right for his team because that's his name, but except for Valparaiso, doing a solid job out there in the backcourt. And it's not a Drake team that has super imposing size, but you do have a lot of guys that they're playing bigger than their size is, like Bennett Sturts, who's saying 6'4". He's just a do-it-all guy. 6.5 assists, 5 boards, 17.5 points per game. Not necessarily shooting it amazing from 3-point. This is a Drake team that, as a whole, they do shoot 35.5% from the outside. It's a Drake team that has a pretty solid rotation. Now, I know that Tavion Banks missed a game or two a little bit earlier in the season, but he's all good to go. He's been able to give you about 7 points per contest. And then guy that's really been standing out to me, Daniel Abreu. He gives you 15 points, shoots the 930s from 3-point range, nice 6'6", a little bit of a combo player for a Drake team. Then they do turn the ball over a little bit more than what I'd like. 13.5 turnovers per game. Now they do a nice job generating those turnovers as well. They've been one of the more efficient defenses in all of college basketball. As Drake, I don't believe, has given up more than 70 points in a game all season long. So that has been very impressive. But you've also got a Valparaiso team that is really starting to hit mock turbo with regards to their offense as well, scoring 70+ points in each of their last 4 games. So it's a good old situation of something's got to give. I do think that Valparaiso could be able to find some clean offense. I do think that Drake is going to be able to do a rock solid job of being able to carve through the Valparaiso team that still leaves something to be desired in terms of their perimeter defense as well. So set my line at 9.5. I'm going to take double figures with Valparaiso, and They might total a 143.5. Valparaiso looking to crank up their tempo, so in on the over and in on the points with Valparaiso. 769, 770 on the betting board. It is UC Davis, and they're going to be playing against Cal Poly, and Cal Poly does find themselves as a very small underdog of 1.5 to 2 points. So on this game, it is 158.5. Semi-total 151.5. For UC Davis, they're looking to play a little bit more slowly, while Cal Poly, they are really looking to run and gun it. For Cal Poly, this is a top 35 team in all of college basketball in terms of total possessions per game, but going to be willing to take a shot on the under because you've got a UC Davis team that they really don't do a great job of generating second chances. 278th in the country in terms of offensive rebound rate, and this is a Cal Poly team that they themselves, they're about 300th in the country in terms of second chance opportunities as well. But for UC Davis, I did set them as a 3.5 point favorite, and I like what I'm seeing out of this Cal Poly team. Mike DeGeorge has done an incredible job of being able to turn around what has been one of the most sorry teams in all of college basketball last few seasons and won 0 games in the Big West. Owen Kuntz has been the main guy with 16 points per game, but I mean, it's really a nice collective out there in the backcourt. Jared Hyder is able to give you 14 points, 3 assists per game, but just not having really much of anything down low with Kuntz's 5 rebounds per game leading the way. That's going to be rough against a UC Davis team that has Nico Dokac, who stands right around 6'10". He's been able to supply the team with about 7.5 boards per contest, and then Ty Johnson is just a dynamo scorer. 2.5 steals, 22.5 points per game, not shooting him well from 3, and they do need to, UC Davis does need to be able to clean it up with a 15 turnovers per game. Cal Poly needs to clean up their turnovers as well. 16 turnovers per contest on them as well. These two teams have been just a little bit out of control, and that's a big reason why I do like the under in the spot as well. I do think that you just get so many dead possessions that's going to be a little bit costly. Isaac Jessup, he's been a nice scorer for this Cal Poly team. He's been able to splash in there about 15.5 points per game. He's shooting north of 47% from 3-point, but let's call it what it is. That should be going southward just a little bit in this one, and with UC Davis now starting to be able to get a few other guys that are contributing alongside of Mr. Johnson, like Pablo Tambilla, who's come in. He's been able to give the team 6 boards, 12.5 points per game. Leo DeBrule has been able to shoot north of 45% for 3-point. I think that it's going to be just enough for UC Davis to get the job done on their home floor. So did sell my line at 3.5. I'm going to be willing to lay the spell number here with UC Davis. Do you think that we might get a little bit of a letdown after Cal Poly had that big win against Samford? And with regards to total, I'm in on the under, so my total 151.5. Sub 71, sub 72 on the betting board. UC Santa Barbara is going to be playing us at UC San Diego. San Diego is a 1.5 point underdog, and your total is between 137.5 to a 138. Santa Barbara's a 5.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the very small number with them. UC San Diego made a nice statement. They were able to win their multi-team event out there in a very tropical place about a week or so ago. I'm trying to think. I think that it was the Boardwalk Battle out there in Florida, but you've got like 100 billion events. But that said, for UC Santa Barbara, their defense has been much better this year than it has been in the past, as right now they've given up 60 points or fewer in 3 of their last 4 games. But what was interesting about Santa Barbara last year, they were actually a really good defensive team on the road, and they were a poor defensive team at home. I have no idea how that worked, but I just think that they're going to have the size advantage down low. Kenny Poto has been able to give you 11 points, 7 boards per contest. You've been able to get about right around 5.5 rebounds, 13.5 points per game out of Jason Fontenot, the second as well. These guys have been rock solid. Now you're dealing with the injury to Colin Smith. He has missed each of the last 3 games for the team, and I think that he's going to be out of the fold once again. On top of that, Zion Sensley, he's been out there in the backcourt for the team. He's missed a few games, but he should be good to go, and that's big because he stands right around about 6'7", 6'8", 7 points on 35.5% 3-point shooting. So he's able to give the team a little bit of stretchability for a Santa Barbara team that as a whole, they're shooting 39% from 3-point range. Do need to clean up the 12.5 turnovers per game, but you've got Stefan Swenson, who's a nice go-to point guard, 4 assists, 10.5 points per game, does a nice job running some clean offense while being able to pop it from 3-point range himself. And for UC San Diego, fear that I've got with this team is that they're just a little bit top-heavy. Hayden Gray has been able to do a nice job giving you nearly 4 steals per contest. I believe he leads all of college basketball with that regard for this San Diego team. They also do a nice job just keeping it clean. They're only turning the ball over 8.5 times per game. They are a top 20 team in all of college basketball. Towards the fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Tyler McGee has been able to give you 18.5 points per contest, shooting north of 40% from 3-point range, but outside of he and Gray, you don't get a lot from the outside. And then you've got one guy down low in Aniwana Tia Jones, who's been able to give you 5.5 boards, 17 points per game. Gentleman from New Zealand has been good, but I do think that down low is where UC San Diego loses this battle. I just don't have a lot of faith in them being able to win the rebound battle. And for the Santa Barbara team, they've been significantly better on the defensive side of things, but I do think that their perimeter game is going to be able to elevate a little bit more as well. So this is a circumstance where I'm going to be taking a look at this total over. I set my total 143.5. Think that this might be close enough for some late game fouling, and I'm going to be willing to lay the very small number here with Santa Barbara. Sub 73, sub 74 on the betting betting board. UC Irvine plays host to Cal State Bakersfield. Meep, the Roadrunners are 15-point underdogs. And your total on this game, it is 133 to 133.5. I did set Irvine as a 16.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. This UC Irvine team is just absolutely flattening teams on defense. We saw that last week in their event out there in the great country of Canada. As for UC Irvine, right now, they are one of the best rebounding teams in all of college basketball. They're one of the best teams in all of college basketball as well at just making life miserable for you. In terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, this UC Irvine team, they're a number 8 team in all of college basketball in that regard. Now, if you look in terms of them away from home, they're number 2 as well. So they have been really proof to just not necessarily loading up on a bunch of cupcakes or anything like that to really warp their numbers. They're playing against good teams and they're just absolutely laying waste to them. And for Bakersfield, you do have a guy in Corey Stevenson who's been able to log for the team 16 points per game. And Bakersfield typically has that one go-to scorer. We saw that last year when they had Caleb Higgins was able to log for the team 18 points per game. Now they've got 2 of them, as you've also been able to get about 16 points, 3 boards per contest out of Jamel Jones. So that's helping out Bakersfield. But I just don't think that they stand a chance down low. This is even with Bedelius Okerke, who comes on over from CSUN Cal State Northridge. He's been able to give the team 6 points, 5 boards, nearly 2 blocks per contest. But when it comes to this Irvine team, Ben Lutken, the 7-footer from Germany, has been tremendous with about 9 boards, 15.5 points per game, shooting 37.5% from 3-point range. Irvine just does the little things well. They shoot 82.5% at the free throw line. Need to clean up the 14 turnovers per game, but Devin Tillis, he's able to give you 8 boards, 15 points. He's got size, and he's currently shooting 68.5% from 3-point range. I thought that an issue for this team was going to be losing that main point guard in Pierre Cockrell from a season ago, but Justin Owen, he's been able to fill that role quite well. He's an off-the-ball scorer a season ago. This year, seen a little bit of a dip in his scoring to about 11 points per contest, but he's given out 4 assists, 4.5 rebounds per game, and this is a Bakersfield team that they themselves sometimes do get a little bit careless with the ball. They're only turning the ball over about 11 times per contest this year. Last year, it was much, much worse for this team, and they've had Marvin McGee be able to step up. He's been able to give the team 12 points per game as well, but with the way that UC Irvine is just really rolling on defense, I do think that they get the job done here. But on top of that, for Irvine, laid it out. This has been a team that's been able to shoot much better from 3-point range than in the past. And if you look at this Bakersfield team, they've been able to turn over a little bit of a new leaf with regards to their offense as well. It has been a defense that has been, shall we say, a little bit testy. They've given up 74 plus points in 3 of their last 4 games. And this Irvine team, they've already put up 93 against Weber State. They've already been able to put up 80 plus in quite a few of their games. Do you think that this is going to be a game where we're going to get a little bit more scoring with an Irvine team that they've actually sped themselves up in recent years as well? Typically, when you think of UC Irvine, you think of a super duper slow team, and you think about that with regards to Bakersfield as well. But Bakersfield currently checking in more like 268th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Typically, they're more in that 300th or so range. And then for UC Irvine, right now they're checking in more around about 220th. So both of these teams playing a little bit faster than what we've seen in the past. So I did set my total at 138.5. I'm in on the over. And with Irvine, want to lay up to 16 with them. Sub 75, sub 76 on the betting board. This will be another game that I write up as Long Beach State is on the road against Cal State Fullerton. Fullerton is a 5.5 to a 6-point favorite. And your total on this game are between 127.5 to a 128. Maybe I'm just a schmuck for this team, but I'm going to be willing to take the points with Long Beach State. Quite literally, it's because Cal State Fullerton is doing nothing well. They're outside the top 340 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They're outside the top 320 in terms of their rebound percentage. Both of these teams have been also pretty miserable on the defensive side of things as well. You've got 2 teams that are really doing nothing at all well, but at the very least, on the side of Long Beach State, you do have the best player in this game in Devin Askew, who's been able to give you 14 plus points per contest. He's not necessarily the most efficient scorer, as Long Beach State, they themselves are in the bottom 20 nationally in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. It's been miserable what we've seen out of both of these teams, but Askew gives you 3.5 assists, shoots 35.5% from 3-point range. Long Beach State team really needs to clean up the 15.5 turnovers per game, but for Cal State Fullerton, they're returning the ball over 13.5 times per game, and they shoot 27% from 3-point range. John Vinode is the only guy on the team that's giving you anything north of 11 points and 4.5 rebounds per game. You don't have a single guy on the roster that gives you north of 1.5 assists per game as well. At the very least, Long Beach State has someone that's able to facilitate. At the very least, Long Beach State has someone that gives you north of 4.5 rebounds per game. As Derek Michael Xavier has been able to give you a little bit over 6 boards per contest. Does a nice job on the offensive glass. So that's been pretty helpful for this team. Again, you got a pair of teams that have been not so savory with regards to their defense as well. Fullerton, 299th in all of college basketball. In terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, our good friends over at Long Beach State, 306. So it's a situation of something's got got to give. And in this sort of a game, there's no team that should be a 6-point favorite, in my opinion. Even the home team should not be laying 6 in this spot. And that's really why I'm going to be writing this game up, because even though Long Beach State has been sorry and pathetic, they should not be a 6-point underdog to a Cal State Fullerton team that is quite literally doing nothing right. So I did set my total at 134.5. I do think that we see some positivity with both of these offenses because they're both going up against also putrid defenses. So I'm in on the over. I wrote up the points with Long Beach State. 777, 778 on the betting board. UC Riverside, it's already they're facing off against Cal State Northridge. Northridge is a 5.5 to a 6-point favorite. Total on this game is 150.5. And with Northridge, I did set them as a 6-point favorite. 5.5 is the absolute max. I'm going to be willing to lay with them, but I'm going to be willing to lay it with Northridge. They have done a really nice job of being able to improve their 3-point shooting from a season ago. Last year, this team was well outside the top 250 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and they've been able to do a much better job this season with being able to bring in some nice impact transfers, but also being able to keep the do-it-all guy that has really been able to elevate this team in Mr. Keontae Johnson, who's been able to give the team 4 assists, 15.5 points, 9 boards per contest, 6'6" combo player that has been really upped up by Marcus Adams, former top 75 recruit of BYU and Kansas, coming in, giving the team 37% 3-point shooting, logging for the team 16 plus points per contest. These guys have been very good for this bunch. Could use a little bit more out of Tyler Beard. He comes on over from Pacific and Georgetown. Hasn't necessarily been able to give you a ton on the offensive side of things, but is giving you about 3 assists per game for a Northridge team that they need to clean up the 14 turnovers per game. But on the flip side, you've got a UC Riverside team that they're pretty much the exact opposite. They do a nice job taking care of the ball, 11.5 turnovers per game. I like Isaiah Moses along with Barrington Hargris, who have been able to combine for north of 30 points per game, with Hargris really becoming that main scorer. 19 points per game. Hargris and Moses, they combine for about 8 assists per game, with Hargris now shooting 37% from the outside. Outside these two really good players, though, you don't have a ton. You've only got one guy on the roster that's giving you north of 6 rebounds per game, and Joel Armitrade, who comes on over from Cal Poly. You've been able to get a little bit down low out of Jack Whitborn, who's now been able to give you 6 boards per contest, but he only gives you a whopping 2.5 points per game as well. It's a Riverside team that, even though they don't turn the ball over a ton, last year they shot less than 40% from the floor. That's still only about 41% thus far this season, and they're going to need to have someone else in that backcourt become sort of that number 3 sort of guy. Caleb Smith, he's a little bit of a versatile player that last year shot 36% from 3. This year, 10 points, but only shooting about 30% from the outside for Riverside. Even though they get clean looks, they don't necessarily knock them down. And for CSUN, with the way that they're able to hit the glass, with the way that they've been able to do a nice job with utilizing their overall size, and have been really a nice defensive team ever since Andy Newman has come in as well. For the CSUN team, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they were our top 100 bunch last season. It's been a little bit wobbly this year, but still about 85th in the country. Meanwhile, for UC Riverside, that is the big liability that you've got for this team. For Riverside, thus far this season, they have been right around about 300th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and I do think that CSUN finds a way to get the job done, and CSUN, a pretty up-tempo team, I do think takes it to that bad Riverside defense. So by total 152, I'm in on the over, and I'm willing to lay up to 5.5 with CSUN. This is the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we hit the extra games, and another game that'll write up 779, 780. It is San Francisco, and they're going to be playing us to St. Louis. St. Louis is a underdog of 9 points, and your total on this game between 151 and 151.5 with San Francisco. I did set them as a favorite of just 6.5 points, so I'm going to be willing to take the points in this ordeal. Robbie Avila coming back is just such a big deal. He was one of the most impactful players in all of college basketball last season when he was over at St. Louis. Guy that's able to give you 17 plus points at 6'10". He's able to shoot it really well from 3-point range, able to give you some good rebounding as well, and that's big against the San Francisco team that, while they've been a top 100 team in terms of their overall rebound rate, you really don't have anyone that's dominating down low for this team. Now, for San Francisco, top 30 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and their backcourt has been rock solid. You've got Malik Thomas, who's able to throw in there 17 plus points per contest, 3 assists, 2.5 steals, and they're good at taking the ball away, 8.5 steals per game, but they themselves turn the ball over darn near 13 times per contest as well. And I do see a little bit of regression coming for their 3-point shooting as well. Out of their top 5 scorers, 4 of them are right now shooting at least 40% from 3-point range. You've got a bunch that has just not been able to find it with Carlton Lingard as well down low. 7 points, 4 boards. He's able to give you a block per contest as well, but I do think that for St. Louis, they hold up down low, and then Gibson Jimerson has been an amazing 3-point shooter for the team, as he's been able to give you 19.5 points. He just fits his Josh Shirt system so well, shooting 44% from 3-point range. You've been able to get some production out of Larry Hughes II, which makes me feel old. He's been able to give you about 5 points per game. It's a little bit of a top-heavy team, but having Kalut Anya being able to give you 11 rebounds, 2 steals per game, all that versatility, I think is going to keep St. Louis lively, along with a guy that does a good job of being able to dole it out in Isaiah Swope, who's been able to give you 5.5 5.5 assists per contest as well. So do feel like St. Louis and their numbers are a little bit warped because they did have to deal with that injury to Robbie Avila for a few weeks. Him coming back, I think, is massive for this team, and I think that provides quite a bit of value here on St. Louis. So I was willing to take 7 or more with them. I'm going to be writing up the +9 that I'm seeing right now. And with regards to total, set mine at a 154.5. Have a St. Louis team that's absolutely looking to push the tempo, and they're well outside the top 150 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis as well. So in on the over, and I'm in on the points with St. Louis. Now we get the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-573, 306-574. It is a Lipscomb, and they're going to be playing us to Southeast Missouri State. Southeast Missouri is an underdog of 16 points, and tonight's game is 148. And with Lipscomb, I made them a 13-point favorite. So I'm going to be willing to take the points here with Southeast Missouri State. For Southeast Missouri State, ever since they made the NCAA tournament a few seasons ago, it's been a little bit less than savory. They've had a lot of losses, especially in the backcourt, and just never getting Kobe Clark back out there down low is an issue. But Teddy Washington, I think, could be a real game changer for this team. He comes in from Texas A&M Corpus Christi. He's really done it all this season. 18.5 points, steal and a half, 7 boards. Not an amazing three-point shooter. When he was over at Corpus Christi, was more of a 37% three-point shooter, but it's uplifted a Southeast Missouri State team that they do the little things. They're generating 8 steals per game. They're turning the ball over just 10.5 times per contest. They're going to get bludgeoned on the glass, as Washington is really the lone guy that gives you 4+ rebounds per game. But this Lipscomb team is a below-average rebounding team that, as Jacob Onyesovic, who's back from 8 seasons ago, he missed the entirety of the 2023-24 season 2 years ago, was the top scorer for the team. 7.5 boards, 18 points, shooting 36.5% from 3, but he's a lone guy for Lipscomb. That is giving you north of 5 rebounds per game. They don't necessarily have ideal size. 6'9" Dylan Faulkner, so able to give you a little bit of something down low. 9.5 points, 4.5 boards, and I always have liked the game of Will Pruitt. He's able to be, I guess you call it a little bit nosy down low. 3 assists, 5 boards, 13 points, shoots in the mid-30s from 3-point range. But Lipscomb is shooting just 32% from 3-point range. They're turning the ball over about 12 times per contest. Joe Anderson, the transfer from Furman, has been pretty rock solid for the team as well. And for Lipscomb, they've been able to find their offense recently. They had some very difficult games to begin the season against the likes of Kentucky and company, but they've now gotten to 80+ points each of their last 3 games. But Southeast Missouri State starting to get things going with their offense as well, with 77+ points in 4 out of their last 5 games. So an interesting ordeal here. Did set my total at 151 with Southeast Missouri State, starting to crank things up tempo a little bit more like we saw when they made the NCAA tournament. So in on the over, and we'll take the 16 with Southeast Missouri State. 306-575, 306-576. It is Southern Miss playing us to Alabama State. Alabama State, an underdog of 1.5 points. Total on this game is 152, and for Southern Miss, I did set them as a favorite of 4 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the very small number for Southern Miss. It's been a roll of the dice all season long for the team, because you never know if you're going to have Andre Cabello playing in this game, if he's not going to be playing in this game, as he's been dealing with a bunch of random injuries. And for Andre Cabello, when he's out there on the court, he's able to be a really dynamic player, but at the same time, he can also play you out of a game as well. He's been able to give the team about 5 assists, 2.5 steals per contest, but he has been dealing with injuries over the last few games. He's been limited to just 4 games. Would be surprised if he plays in this game, which honestly isn't a bad thing, because we've got a pair of guys in Neftali Alvarez, coupled with Christian Watson, who'll be able to combine for about 7 assists per game. Alvarez gives you about 12.5 points per game. Now, neither of these guys are great 3-point shooters, and that's what you're really missing for the team. But you've got Montgomery squared, as Kobe Montgomery has been able to give you about 8.5 points per contest, shooting 50% from 3. And Jet Montgomery, freshman from Franklin, Tennessee, has been able to shoot 50% from distance as well. So these guys have been able to help out. And then Dennis J. Harris, who was over at Arkansas season ago, 2 years ago, was at Southern Miss himself. He's able to give you 7.5 rebounds per game. Should win the battle down low against an Alabama State team that still doesn't have ideal size. They've always been year in and year out a bottom 25 team with regards to field goal shooting percentage, but they've really cleaned things up this year. They're only turning the ball over about 10 times per contest. They're shooting closer to 42% from the floor after their 37% field goal shooting percentage a season ago. One of the worst marks in all of college basketball. Need to get a little bit more out of Deontay Bass, who comes over from Georgetown. He's giving you just 3.5 rebounds per game, and when you've had Micah Octave out there, he's been a good rebounder with about 6.5 boards per contest. Problem is, he's only been able to play in 2 games due to injury. You've also got a guy in CJ Hines, who I like. He's been able to log for the team about 14.5 points per game, but he's been dealing with injury as well. Was limited to just 15 minutes in that game against SMU after he had missed the previous game due to injury as well. So that's something that's lingering for this team. TJ Madlock, the coach's son, in Tony Madlock, he's been really doing it all for this team. 3.5 assists, 5.5 boards, 12.5 points, with the guy with the ball in his hands quite a bit, but I do think that for Alabama State, with Southern Miss right now dealing with that Andre Curbelo injury, that it's going to slow this game down just a hair, because when Andre Curbelo is out there, Southern Miss plays super fast. Without him out there, they play a much more, shall we say, tame style, and I think that that's going to be the case here. So semi-total 150, diving in on the under. And I think that for Southern Miss, they're going to be in more control in this game, especially with a few injury concerns for Alabama State. So going to be willing to lay the 1.5 with Southern Miss, set them as a 4-point favorite, and in on the total under 306, 577, 306, 578. South Carolina State plays us to Samford, and Samford is a 7.5-point favorite. Total on this game is 159.5, and for Samford, I'm going to write this one up. I set them as a 13.5-point favorite. South Carolina State, a really good effort, by the way, a few days ago when they went to Xavier. They played them to within a possession, but this is a Samford team that they just play a frenetic, harebrained, insane style, and I do think that they're going to be able to just really take South Carolina State out of sorts. Now, for South Carolina State, they're going to give at you a bunch of different looks. They've got essentially 11 different guys that are playing north of 10 minutes per contest. They've been able to see one guy be able to step up down low, and Drayton Jones, who's been able to give you about 5 boards, 11.5 points per game. And as a collective, they're shooting 36% from three-point range, but they've had a few games against non-D1 teams that have warped their numbers a little bit. And then on the flip side, for Samford, this is a top 25 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. They lose a lot of what they had from a season ago, but Ryland Jones, 11 points, 6 assists. He's been able to do a nice job running this offense that's currently shooting as a collective 36% from three-point range. Out of their top 5 scorers, 4 of them are shooting north of 40% from three-point range. And when you got the versatility of someone like a 6'11" Riley Allen Patch, who's right now shooting 57% from 3, it's just absolutely tremendous. Now, he's been dealing with a little bit of injury. He's been limited in quite a few of the team's last few games, but you've got Colin Holloway, who comes on over from Tulane. He's been able to give you 12 points, 4.5 rebounds. Like what I'm seeing there for South Carolina State, you just don't have that guy in the backcourt that's really able to be a elevator and a facilitator for the team. Mitchell Taylor right now leading the way with 2.1 assists per contest. This is a Samford team that they just always get their frenetic style. They've scored 75 plus points, and I believe all but one of their games this far this season, and I do think that they're going to be cranking this game up tempo and take it to a South Carolina State team that still feels like looking for their identity just a little bit. So this is one of these games where I'm going to be willing to lay with Samford, and did set my total at a 163.5. So I'm in on the over to go along with laying it with Samford. 36.579, 36.580. It is NC Central, and they're playing us to Radford. Radford, a 3-point road favorite, and your total on this game, it is 142. I said NC Central as the 2.5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take them outright on the money line for Radford. This team is looking to get back to their defensive roots. It was very much working out well for them until last year. Things just went straight down the toilet bowl with regards to that defense, and now they've got a guy that went down mid-season last year in Josiah Harris back to the fold. He was limited to 16 games last season where he was giving the team 6.5 points, 6.5 boards per contest. Now he's been able to give the team a little bit over 7 rebounds, block and a half per game. So like what I'm seeing there. And then Brandon Macklin has come in. He's been a nice facilitator, giving the team 3 assists to fewer than 2 turnovers per game. Radford as a collective is shooting about 36.5% from three-pointers, with Jarvis Moss being really the main scorer for the team with 68 points per game. David Early comes in from Tennessee Tech. He's only been able to give you about 7 or so points per game after he was a double-figure scorer for them last season. You're going to need to get a little bit more there, and it is a Radford team that's currently checking in 259th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. I believe a little bit more of that is due to the schedule rather than anything else. And for NC Central, this is always a proud defense as 343rd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis right now. I think that they're going to step up in a big way, but I think that with NC Central, the guard play is better in this game with having a guy in Deontay Johnson who's able to give you 8.5 points, 4.5 assists per contest. This team has gotten a lot out of Pool Boy King in terms of just raw scoring as well. He's right now logging 16.5 points per game with NC Central. Not really having a ton down low, so Radford is going to be able to win that battle, but for this NC Central team, dealing with the injury to Kalichi Okaragwo, hopefully I said that correctly, and him being able to come back and being able to give this team an average of 6.5 rebounds per game in the 4 games since he's returned, that gives them a little bit more of something, and I do expect a little bit more moving forward of Timmy Edidire, who's been able to give you about 5 rebounds, 2.5 assists at 6'4". He's just a very shifty guy that's willing to play bigger than his overall size. And NC Central, even though they are a team that has been giving up a lot of points, they still have been able to generate 10 plus steals per game. They've got good active hands against a Radford team that can get a little bit loose with the ball. For Radford, better defense recently, giving up 70 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. NC Central improving with their defense as well, giving up a combined against non-D1 schools like less than 40 points per game in their last 2 games. I do think that that is certainly going to be going northward, but that said, I do think that NC Central finds some cracks in this Radford backcourt. They turn defense into offense and get the job done. Did somebody total 142.5? Both of these teams have been struggling much more with their defense than they have in the past, so we'll take the 142 over, and I'm going to take NC Central outright on the money line. 306-581, 306-582. Longwood plays us Maryland Eastern Shore. The Shore is an underdog of 19 points, and your total on this game is 145. We're back in on Maryland Eastern Shore. I set my line at 18.5. Wouldn't want to take a hair less than 19, but I'm going to take the 19 for Maryland Eastern Shore. Less than savory efforts the last 3 times out. Getting blown out by north of 40 points against Arkansas, Illinois, and UConn. A little bit of a better effort against Little Rock, and I do expect that here against a Longwood team that has a lot of really good guard play as KJ McClurg. He was one of the better D2 players in all of college basketball last year. He stepped in. He's been able to give the team 12 points, shot in the mid-30s from three-point range, but a little bit of a one-trick pony for a Longwood team that does not have a single guy that gives you north of 4 rebounds per game. Elijah Tucker, he's been able to give you 7 points. 4 boards actually began his career out there at Xavier, so he's been rock solid there. And then Michael Christmas. Well, he was giving them a lot of Christmas down low last season with 11.5 points, 6 boards, shooting 40% from 3. He's just regressed this year. 10 points, 4 boards, shooting in the mid-20s from three-point range. But even with that, this Longwood team has still been able to persevere because they've been very just hard-nosed on defense. They're turning the ball over, though, 13 times per game. They're shooting less than 30% from distance, albeit they go up against the Maryland Eastern Shore team well outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis. But they have a guy that's going to be able to keep them in the game in Casey Shaw, who's been able to give the team 37.5% three-point shooting. He comes on over with his coach Cleo Hill over from Winston-Salem. 18.5 points, 5.5 boards, 3.3 assists per game. Dealing with the injury to Evan Johnson has been a little bit rough, but now they get him back. A guy that began his career over at Georgia State and was a rock-solid scorer a few seasons ago over at Georgia State. 2 years ago, was averaging about 9.5 points per game. Right now, giving the team 10 points, pair of assists per contest, shooting in the mid-30s from three-point range. That'll elevate a Maryland Eastern Shore team that, against better competition, they've had a tough time with their offense, but we've already seen them hold in there in one-possession games against Old Dominion along with Penn, albeit those are teams that are way down this season, but this is also a Longwood team that they themselves, against D1 competition, have been having a little bit of a tough time with their offense as well, scoring less than 70 points at 3 out of their last 4 games. So I do think that this Maryland Eastern Shore team going to be able to hold in there. I do think that Longwood going to be able to bust out a little bit more with their offense, but again, this is a Longwood team that shoots below 30% from 3. They're turning the ball over a ton, so semi-total 142.5. I'm in on the under, very much more of a defense-oriented Longwood team, and I'm willing to take 19 plus here with Maryland Eastern Shore. 306-583, 306-584. Nicholls plays us at Southeast Louisiana. Southeast Louisiana is an underdog of 3 points, and your total on this game is 137. And for Southeast Louisiana, I set them as a dog of 5 points, so I'm going to be willing to lay with Nicholls. For Southeast Louisiana, a really nice road win against Tulane a few days ago. You have to be a little bit worried about a letdown spot, having to hit the road against a Nicholls team that they've got some good versatility with Jamal West. Jamal West, I think, has the potential to be the most impactful player in this game, as he's done a nice job being able to supply for this team about 10 points, 7 boards, 2 blocks per contest. Last year, he was able to give you a little bit more from the outside. Hasn't done as much of that this season, but now you've got Trey English to be able to give you a little bit more ball handling. Has not necessarily been too much of a scorer for the team, but he's able to give you 3 assists, a little bit over a steal per game for a Nicholls team that has really cleaned things up in terms of their overall just facilitation, 10.5 turnovers per game. You've got Brayan Ireland along with Rob Brown III, who have been able to combine for about 22 points per contest. Neither of these guys shooting it amazing from three-point range, but Ike Cornish, who began his career at Maryland, he's been able to give you about 10 points per game. At Southeast Louisiana, just doesn't have as much depth as you've got with Nicholls. I like Sam Hines. He comes on over from South Florida, where he was a starter a few seasons ago. 14.5 points, 7.5 boards, shooting 37.5% from 3. And this Southeast Louisiana team as a whole, they're shooting 35% from the outside. They're also turning the ball over about 13 times per game as well. And for Southeast Louisiana, last year what worked out well for them was playing a little bit more defense-oriented, slowing things down, back in the top 125 in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis. So they've been able to do a rock-solid job there, going up against a Nicholls team that they themselves more around about 240th. Brody Woodbury has been able to give you 5 rebounds per game for Southeast Louisiana, but question becomes, what do you do right now with a guy in Carlos Paez, who throughout his career he's always been about a 5 to 4 assists per game guy. Right now he's only giving you about 2 assists per contest, with having Jacavion Buckley being able to give you 2 steals, 4.5 assists, 13 points per contest, but really doesn't give you a lot from the outside. I do think that with Nicholls having all sorts of switchability, having a lot of guys out there in the backcourt, and a bunch of in general, it does feel like they're starting to bust through with regards to their offense, but defensively still rock solid, allowing 70 points or fewer in now 3 out of their last 5 games, got a Southeast Louisiana team that they themselves, though, have been able to bust up 69 very nice plus points in 4 of their last 5 games. So I did set my total at 145. I do think they're going to get a little bit more scoring in this game, and I do think the Nicholls just flows their offense a little bit better. I'm going to be willing to lay with Nicholls, and I'm going to be in on this total over as I set mine at a 145, 365.85, 365.86. Another game that I'm going to be writing up as UT Rio Grande Valley is going to be playing us to Stephen F. Austin. Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin, well, they are a Stone Cold 6-point underdog, and your total on this game, it is 141, and with Stephen F. Austin, I set them as a 9-point underdog, so I'm going to be willing to lay with Grande Valley, and I'm going to be writing that up for Stephen F. Austin. Out of 364 D1 teams, they are 363rd in terms of turnovers on a per-possession basis. They are turning the ball over north of 18 times per game right now, and the defense has still been very rock solid. Like, for Stephen F. Austin, they've actually played some really good defense. I don't think that they have given up north of 70 points in a game thus far this season, but when you just can't get anything going on offense, that's a big, giant issue, and they're right now dealing with their big haul in the transfer portal, Chris Johnson, who comes over from Texas, being out the last 5 games. That's an issue for this team. You've been able to have Nana Atibo Siko be able to give you 8 boards, 12 points per contest to control things down low, and then Matt Amon in the backcourt has been able to give you 13.5 points, 2.5 assists. Team does a good job of being able to generate steals, but that said, I was underselling them when I was talking about the turnovers. They're averaging 22.9 turnovers per game. 22.9! Like, good grief. And they shoot 59% the free throw line. If this is a nip and tuck game, you have no faith in them whatsoever of hitting a free throw. Meanwhile, for UT Rio Grande Valley, they've really been able to clean stuff up. You've got KT Ramey, who's come on over from DePaul. He's logging for the team 14 points, shooting 43% from 3-point range. And UT Rio Grande Valley does a good job of being able to generate turnovers themselves. They're actually generating more steals per game than the Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin team is. Grand Valley, always a team that's looking to play up tempo, but they're not a top 100 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Now, with Stephen F. Austin, again, getting back to that defense, 25th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. That's been relatively impressive. And for our good friends at UT Rio Grande Valley, they are not quite there. They're more around 262nd, but Hassan Abdul Hakim, his versatility at 6'7" is big, 7 boards, 13.5 points. He's able to give out 3 assists, 2 steals. He does a little bit of everything for the team, including pop some threes. And then they brought in the Illinois State transfer and Howie Fleming Jr. He's been just all over the place in his college basketball career, but he's been a do-it-all guy as well. 9 points, 5.5 boards, 2.5 assists. Right now, he's shooting north of 40% from 3-point range. The overall versatility of Grand Valley is something I do like. They've been able to clean up their offense quite a bit. And again, the 23 turnovers per game for Stephen F. Austin going to be very costly in this one. I do think that UT Rio Grande Valley, a team that loves to play up tempo, is able to bust through, get some points up on the board. I think that we see Stephen F. Austin give up 70 plus for the first time all season. So set my total 145. I like the over. And for my write-up, I'm willing to lay with Grand Valley. 306.587, 306.588. Arkansas State is going to be playing us at Jackson State. Jackson State is a underdog of 15.5 points. The last game, it is 148. And with Arkansas State, I did set them as a favorite of 17.5 points. So I'm going to be willing to lay it. Arkansas State last year was a top 5 team in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis at home, and I don't think that they're going to be quite that this season, but Arkansas State has a really nice unit that I think is just going to be able to blow out a Jackson State team that they had a nice spirited effort a few nights ago against St. Louis, but it is a unit that still just doesn't give you a lot from the outside. The good news is that Sean Ruffin is finally back for this team. He is a former McDonald's All-American, a guy that when he was over at Ole Miss a few seasons ago was averaging 12 plus points per game. He made his season debut against Jackson State, so that's going to be massive for this team, but you just don't necessarily have a ton down low other than Romeo Mansell, who's been able to give you about 6.5 rebounds per game. Lone guy on the roster, though, that gives you north of 4.6 rebounds per contest. Shannon Grant has given you a little bit as well, but it's a team that as a whole is shooting 29.5% from 3-point range, turning the ball over 15 times per game, and they're allowing opponents to shoot north of 43% from 3-point range. Like, my goodness gracious, this team is just getting absolutely gashed from 3-point range, so that's not great. Juan Urania, he's able to give you a little bit of outside shooting, and up until that game against St. Louis was not really giving you a ton. He was able to put in their double figures a game or two ago, so that helps his team out a little bit, but I don't know if that's necessarily going to be able to be duplicated. And on the flip side, you do have a bunch in Arkansas State that I think is going to be able to control things down low, and Arkansas State, while they might not be an ideal team in terms of their defense, they've been able to get much better than what they were 8 seasons ago. They're forcing about 13.5 turnovers per game. It's a Jackson State team that I think is still going to be very sloppy with it, and Arkansas State, one of the best 3-point shooting defenses offenses in all of college basketball against a Texas State team that just does not provide a lot down low. So this is a circumstance where I'm going to be willing to lay it. With Arkansas State, I did set them as a favorite of 17.5 points. And with regards to total, I set mine at a 149.5. I do think that Arkansas State going to start to get things going with their three-point shooting, and I do think that Texas State, they themselves, going to start to find a little bit of regression with an Arkansas State team that opponents are shooting less than 26% from three-point range against. I think that should be going northward a little bit. So in on the over, I'm going to lay with Arkansas State, 306-589, 306-590. Texas A&M Corpus Christi is playing also Lamar. Lamar is an underdog of 8.5 points. Total on this game is 153, and with Lamar, I did set them as a underdog of 9 points. So here at the 8.5, it's the max I'm going to be willing to lay, but I'm going to be willing to lay with Corpus Christi. His team does a good job of being able to generate turnovers last year. They were a top 40 team in all of college basketball. With that regard, they've been down a little bit this year, but you do return a lot of the good pieces from the season ago that have been shooting a little bit better from three-point range than last year. They're never going to be an amazing three-point shooting team, but having Gary Clark being able to give you 14-plus points per contest, last year he gave you closer to 8 rebounds per game. This year down to about 5.5 boards, but shooting 35.5% from three. Team as a whole, I do think that this regresses a little bit, but they're up to about 35.8% three-point shooting. Still turn the ball over 13 times per game, but they're generating 9 steals per game. You've got a bit of a do-it-all backcourt piece in Isaac Williams, who gives you a steal and a half, 4.5 assists, 9.5 points per game, while being able to shoot north of 40% from three-point range. Odis has been able to give you about 5.5 rebounds per game. This team by committee has done a good job of being able to clean up the glass, and for Lamar, Adam Hamilton, he's really the main holdover from a season ago. He's been rock solid down low, 9.5 points, 6.5 boards, giving you a block per contest as well, but the three-point shooting that was there for Lamar a season ago, just not there this year. Now, they bring in a top 100 junior college transfer according to JUCOrecruiting.com, and Alexis Marmayoles was able to give you 16 points per contest, and then you've also been able to get about 13 points per game out of another guy that I like, who's been able to give you about 4 assists per contest, and Jashawn Jackson. He comes on over after last year. He was more of a part-time starter for this team 2 years ago. He was over at Abilene Christian as well, so is a player that does a very good job, be able to generate some turnovers. He's been able to get the team north of 2 steals per contest as well, but it's a little bit of a top-heavy team that needs a bit more of Cody Penbecker, who's only been able to give you about 7.5 points per contest after last year. That was closer to 8 points per game, and last year he was shooting much better than his 27.5% three-point shooting for Corpus Christi. They do a nice job of being able to guard the perimeter as well. Last year, a top 35 team in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. With their tough schedule this year, it's been up a little bit, but also have a Lamar unit that leaves quite a bit of something to be desired defensively as well. 324th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, going up against the Corpus Christi team that has been really looking to crank up their tempo. They've been playing at one of the fastest tempos in all of college basketball, so this is a circumstance where I did set my total at a 153. Right now, seeing that total at a 153, I'm in a little bit of wait-and-see mode right now. I'm doing this as very initial openers are coming out on the extra game, so 152.5 or less, and on the over 153.5 or higher or the under, but with Corpus Christi, want to lay up to 8.5 with them. 306-591, 306-592. Incarnate Word is going to be playing us to Northwestern State. Northwestern State is an underdog of 4 points, and your total on this game is 139. I'm willing to lay the 4 and not a half a point more with Incarnate Word. With Incarnate Word, they did a really nice job in the transfer portal, bringing in the Ball State transfers, as Xavier Bailey has been your top scorer with 17 points per contest, while Jalen Anderson has been your top facilitator, 6.5 assists. He also gives you 16 points per game, and they're combined shoot 40% from 3 points for an Incarnate Word team that has only turned the ball over 10 times per game. They don't necessarily have the world's most ideal size, but we've been able to have guys be able to step up down low, as you've got a combined little bit north of 12 rebounds per game. Jordan Pike along Jaden Williams. Williams, as a 6'9" freshman from the state of Illinois, has been a nice clogger down low, being able to give you about 1.7 blocks per game. And for Northwestern State, I think that they're going to have a little bit of a tough time with that, with Willie Williams being able to give you about 6.5 rebounds per game. Now, Northwestern State, one of the few teams that I think talent-wise is able to match up with the backcourt of Incarnate Word, with Addison Patterson, a former top 100 recruit of Oregon, along with Nevada, being able to supply the team with 11 points, 5 boards, 3.5 assists. Has not really found his three-point shot, but he offers good versatility at about 6'7", 6'8", and then additionally, you bring in a guy that I like in Micah Thomas, who's been able to do a nice job being able to give out a few assists per contest. He's throwing in there 10-plus points per contest as well, so these guys will be able to do a solid job for a Northwestern State team that they've cleaned up their offense a little bit as well. 12.5 turnovers per game is not necessarily amazing, but you bring in John Sanders. He comes over from Coastal Carolina, where he was able to help facilitate their offense. Northwestern State last year had closer to about 13.5 turnovers per game. By the way, in Love Bettis, if he's able to stay healthy. He's a nice three-point shooter that's right now shooting 39% from the outside. So I do think that you get a lot of scoring in this game. Incarnate Word really has been able to elevate with that regard, 74-plus points so far their last 5 games, leaving a lot to be desired on the defensive side of things, but offensively they've been rock solid. Northwestern State, they do like to play a little bit more slowly, but a lot of their, shall we say, offensive woes have come because they've been playing against the likes of, LSU, Oklahoma, teams like that. So I do think that getting into conference play can help out this Northwestern State offense. I did set my total at 146.5. I'm in on the over, and I'm willing to lay up to 4 with Incarnate Word, and we wrap things up with 306.593, 306.594, East Texas A&M on the road against UC Christian. UC Christian is a 2-point favorite, and your total on this game, it is 136.5, and I set my total at 141. I'm in on the over for UC Christian. One of the lesser offenses in all of college basketball, I think is very fair to say. You've had Julian Mackey give you 13.5 points per game, but the team is right now shooting 28.5% from 3-point range. They've done a nice job cleaning things up in terms of the 10 turnovers per contest, and this is just a completely different regime in general for Houston Christian. We're used to this team playing super up and down, up-tempo under Ron Cottrell, where they would give up like 90 points to be able to get to 80 themselves. Now you bring in the D2 coach and Craig Doty, who was over at Emporia State 8 seasons ago, and they've really slowed things down. You've got Elijah Brooks, who comes down over from North Dakota. He's been able to give you 11 points, 4.5 rebounds per game. Big issue that I do see with this team, though, is that they don't have a lot of size. Right now, Brooks is right now your top rebounder with about 4.5 rebounds per game. It's not like East Texas A&M is necessarily the monsters of the low post or anything like that, but Josh Taylor, he was a starter 2 seasons ago over at East Tennessee State, began his career at Georgia, and he's been able to give the team about 5.5 boards, a little bit over a block per contest. Should be able to win that battle down low. Scooter Williams, according to ChicagoRecruiting.com, was a top 65 junior college transfer for this season, and he's been able to give the team some facilitation. 12.5 points, 3 or so rebounds, 2.5 assists, a block and a steal per contest. Problem is, he really doesn't shoot it well from 3-point range. At East Texas A&M, they're one of your lesser 3-point shooting teams in all of college basketball as well. Shooting 28.5% from the outside, 60% the free throw line. You've been able to have Khalik Abdul-Mateen be able to give you 11 points per contest, but it has been a little bit rough for them with Tay Mosher, the transfer from East Carolina, only giving you about 5 points per contest. Both of these teams have had their issues on offense. Both of these teams have had their issues on defense. It's a good old situation of something's got to give, but East Texas A&M, I think that they're going to look to fly a little bit more, and this is an East Texas A&M team that is well outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and even though Houston Christian has slowed down their tempo as well, this has been a team that has been very far from efficient on the defensive side of things, as well as they are currently 337th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. So did set my total at 141. I'm in on the over, and I'm willing to take 2+ here with East Texas A&M. Made Houston Christian a 1.5 point favorite, and that'll wrap things up for the Thursday edition of Coast to Coast Seeps out, part of the VSiN family of podcasts. Big thanks to Curtis Rogers, who does great work over at 710 Seattle Sports. He joined me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Seeps, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of 2 ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at JDon_D1. Keep in mind, letters they me does not matter, so as per usual, please just send these into the timeline, and the other way is sign an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like here on this podcast via the 5-star review. I'm coming at you guys every single day on this podcast, regular season and off season, so I'll be back with you guys once again tomorrow. Thank you.